Hey, have you ever thought about having a podcast of your very own? If so, great news. Spotify has a platform that lets you make one super easily, then distribute it everywhere and even earn money. It's all in one place for free. It's called Spotify for Podcasters, and here's how it works. So, Spotify for Podcasters lets you record and edit podcasts right from your phone or computer. So, no matter what your setup is like, you can get started creating as soon as today. Then you can distribute your podcast to Spotify, and everywhere else podcasts are heard. Video podcasts are also available on Spotify, so that's pretty cool. And with Spotify for Podcasters, you can earn money in a variety of ways, including ads and podcast subscriptions. And best of all, it's totally free with no catch. Ever since I discovered Spotify for Podcasters, I really just feel like it's taken my podcasting to a whole nother level. So I highly recommend you give it a try if a podcast is something that you've been thinking about as well. Just download the Spotify for Podcasters app or go to www.spotify.com/podcasters to get started. Hey there, I'm Julie, and this is the Married to Addiction podcast. If you're here, then you're probably what I call my secret sister. We're in a situation we never asked to be in and fighting a battle we never wanted to fight. We're faith-filled women who are married to an alcoholic, and it affects every inch of our lives. If that sounds like you, then this is a safe place for you to land. Married to Addiction is a faith-based podcast where I help you find the tools and strength you need to navigate your husband's addiction without losing yourself in the process. So please subscribe and tune in as often as you can, because your husband's recovery is important, but so is yours. Have you been having trouble with setting boundaries for your alcoholic husband? If so, then I have created something that was made specifically for you. It's my Boundaries mini course, and in it, you will not only get a better understanding about boundaries in general for us as wives of alcoholics, but you will also walk away with some boundaries of your very own that you can put into place as soon as today. In this Boundaries mini course, we're going to talk about how to create healthy boundaries based on the right foundation and why they are so important for us when we're married to somebody who's addicted. We'll talk about what the Bible has to say about boundaries. Yes, they're biblical. We'll talk about why you may not have had success with creating or adhering to boundaries before, as well as the number one misconception around boundaries for wives of alcoholics. I'll also give you some examples of some healthy boundaries that you could create. And I'll show you how to successfully put healthy boundaries into place in your own life, which enables you to feel so much more empowered and peaceful, and it gets rid of a lot of the confusion and overwhelm that you're probably feeling right now. So in order to find out more about the Boundaries mini course, you just have to head to my website, marriedtoaddiction.com, click on the drop down that says Need Help, and you will see the button right there for the Boundaries mini course. I hope that you join me there. Hello, and welcome into episode 77 of the Married to Addiction podcast. Today's episode is called The Ripple Effect of Working on Our Own Recovery. I know you've heard me talk about working on our recovery. In fact, that's pretty much the entire premise of this whole podcast and really the Married to Addiction platform as a whole. But we're going to talk about how doing so is not only vitally important for us, but it's also important for many others around us. So you've probably heard it said that when a stone is thrown into a pond, it creates ripples that extend far beyond the place of initial impact where the stone was thrown in. This same exact thing can be said for the journey of personal recovery as the wife of an alcoholic. So today we're going to be talking about that ripple effect of working on our own recovery. So first of all, we have to understand that addiction, our husband's addiction, takes a massive toll on us as wives. I was so blind to this because I was so focused on my husband's addiction and how to manage/control/fix it that I did not even realize or think about or consider that I could do something about all of the things that were happening to me because of that fixation on him and his addiction. It takes a massive toll on us. Mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and even physically. I know you've heard me talk before many times about how I ended up covered in stress-induced hives, like multiple times a day. I was a manager, I was a property manager, and I would sit there at my desk, and sometimes there was somebody in front of me, a resident or somebody on the other side of the desk. Sometimes I was on a conference call with, leadership or corporate or whatever. Sometimes I was just in there by myself trying to work on financial reports, and the hives would just come, and I could feel them start, and I would think to myself, "Oh no," because it was all over my torso, from basically my neck down to almost to my knees, tops of my thighs, and it was just hundreds of hives. And I don't know if you've ever had hives, but it is the most insufferable, uncomfortable thing that you can ever deal with. The itching is intense. And of course, you can't scratch it because it gets worse. And if you have somebody sitting there in your office, you can't really just start scratching yourself anyway. But the point being, that was a massive effect on my life. It happened every day, multiple times a day for months on end. And I had no idea that it was related to my husband's addiction. Guess what? After he got sober, the hives went away. That was when I put two and two together. But that was a massive impact on me physically. I also had heart palpitations. I also had stress headaches all the time. And, that's just the physical part of it. I mean, emotionally, I was just destroyed. Spiritually, I was mad at God. I, felt like he had abandoned me. Mentally, I was just so taxed. I lived in a constant state of just massive anxiety and stress. And it was just the worst time of my life, the absolute worst time of my life. And I'm sure that unfortunately, some of that probably also sounds familiar to you. This will not get better on its own. You won't just magically wake up someday and everything is okay. If everything is going the same with your husband and you are not making any changes on your side, this will continue. The worst part about it is that as your husband's addiction progresses, your spiral down into the depths of this will usually progress too, getting worse and worse. So we have got to both identify the wounds that we are suffering and the trauma that we are suffering because of this, and more importantly, address this for ourselves. We talk about ways to do that on this podcast all the time. Let's talk a little bit, though, about how you working on your own recovery and your own healing can positively impact those around you. Now, you've heard me say 1,000 times that it is vitally important to care for yourself through this process, to take care of yourself through this process, and how life-changing that can be, and it truly can be. But what about that ripple effect? How does this have a ripple effect? And how can our recovery affect other things as well? First, it can affect your family. If you have children in your house, you working on you and you working on your healing and your recovery and untying from this addiction and the chaos that it is bringing into your life and your heart and your home can have a massive positive effect on your children. I hate what my son went through when my husband was deep in addiction. And there was some of it that was caused by me because I was the one who would be confrontational. I was the one who would scream and yell. I was the one who made the house feel chaotic by highlighting the fact that my husband was drunk. Now, did my son maybe already know that at 3 to 5 years old when it was really, really bad? Probably. Did he also see mommy freaking out and screaming and yelling and crying and things being, thrown and doors being slammed? Absolutely. Getting control of what we can control, which is us, doing that healing work on our recovery can massively affect our children in a positive way. It can also affect your husband. If I had a dime for every time a woman that I've worked with tells me that detaching with love, working on her own healing, having healthy boundaries has affected their husband positively, I would have a lot of money. Because what happens is when we start working on those things, he is left with consequences he has not experienced before. He is left with no excuses that relate to us and how we are driving him to drink because we're acting crazy. He is left in a position that he may not have been in before, ever, as far as when he's during his addiction, because we have been so wrapped up in it that when we start to have those boundaries and detach from it, he's kind of like, okay, well, this is different and I don't really like this because now I'm completely responsible for myself. I have nobody cleaning up after me or, driving me to drink, quote unquote, and he's left to just have some self-reflection and some consequences of his own, which can eventually lead him to be open to recovery. How else does this have a ripple effect? Well, aside from their relationships with our children and, affecting the relationship with our husband too, it also affects other relationships, friendships, extended family. People who, when you are so wrapped up in this and you are so caught up in trying to fix everything and manage everything, and you are just a shell of yourself because you are just absolutely at the end of your rope and you are just drowning, those people haven't heard from you. Those people haven't really talked to you. Those people really don't have a relationship with you right now because you're kind of in a place of hiding, right? I was ashamed. I felt embarrassed about what was happening. I didn't want anybody to know because I could handle it. I could manage it, which I couldn't. I kept them in the dark and I kept them at arm's length because of what was happening in my home with my husband. So when we start working on our own recovery, we get those relationships back. And that doesn't mean bringing all of our friends into the loop of everything that's happening, because sometimes that's not the best idea. But it does mean that now there is more of you to go around and you have more peace in your heart and calm in your life. And so now you can have friendships again. You can have relationships again with extended family. You feel okay doing that because you're not just trying to make it through another day. You really are getting your life back in every regard. How else does this have a ripple effect? It has a ripple effect at work as well. If you work, as I was talking about earlier, my own personal story, my work was affected a lot by the effects that my husband's addiction were having on me because I was not doing any sort of personal recovery. When I would get those hives, as you can imagine, I was extremely distracted. I would also leave work sometimes. I would make an excuse to leave work if I couldn't get a hold of my husband because panic would set in. And I was making up all these scenarios in my head of all the awful things that he was doing or that could happen in that moment. So I would leave work. My employer was not getting the best of me at all. My employer was one of the people who were affected by the fallout of what I was experiencing because of my husband's addiction. So when we work on that and when we are focused on changing that, we can drastically improve our performance at work too. Who benefits from that? Well, you do, because you're not at risk of getting fired, but also your coworkers benefit from that. Your boss benefits from that. The company as a whole can benefit from that because now you're fully doing your part and, doing what you were hired to do. I honestly wasn't doing what I was hired to do when my husband was deep in addiction some days. There were some days where I just had to close my door. I was not there for my coworkers. I was not there for my employees. I was not there for my boss sometimes because I just couldn't. I couldn't. I had nothing left. And I was just trying to make it through the day so that I could go home and cry. Another thing we don't always consider is that changing us can inspire others to change as well. And they don't necessarily have to know what you've been going through, but they will see, people around you will see when you start making changes that affect you for the better. And when you go from having to shut your door all day because you just can't deal with it, and when you come out, your eyes are red because you were actually already crying in your office. When you go from that to getting back to how you were before all of this, or just, maybe if you've been going through this the whole time you've been there, maybe just changing in general, people notice that. People notice when you are more peaceful. People notice when you are more calm. People notice when you have more joy in your spirit. And those things are all things that happen to us when we work on our own recovery. So yes, embarking on your personal recovery journey can truly be life-changing for you, of course, but also for so many others around you. Remember that recovery for us as wives of alcoholics is not only about healing ourselves, but it's about creating that ripple effect of positive change in our lives and the lives of so many others that we come into contact with every day. I hope that this has inspired you to work on your own recovery if you are not already. If you've heard that term and you want that for yourself and for others in your life, but you don't really know how to walk that out or what that looks like specifically, or you just need guidance and direction and support to get you there, that is exactly what we do in the Secret Sister Circle. I had somebody write to me recently who said that she'd been listening to the podcast for a really long time and had been considering joining the Secret Sister Circle for over a year. And she finally did, and she was so glad that she did. If that sounds like you, or even if you've just been listening for a couple of episodes, I want to encourage you to please just go check it out. Go to the website, marriedtoaddiction.com, and click on the Need Help drop-down and take a look at the Secret Sister Circle page. Everything it includes, the testimonials, there are many on there. The way that it works, it is not a 12-step program. It is a faith-based program based on the process of recovery and restoration as it is laid out for us biblically. It is what I was looking for when my husband was really addicted, and that is why I created it. It includes a private group of women just like you who are all going through the same types of things with their husbands. Everyone in there is so warm and wonderful and encouraging and understanding and supportive. It's an amazing place of community. You get access to over 50 trainings and lessons on day-to-day things that you will encounter as the wife of an alcoholic, like how do I deal with X, Y, and Z? It's in there. But it's not an overwhelming process. So you might think 50 trainings, I don't have time to listen to 50 trainings. Well, guess what? You don't have to listen to 50 trainings right away. It is laid out for you in a way that when you come in, you take a little evaluation, self-evaluation, and it tells you where to start. And you just start right there and you just go through the process. It is all self-paced. It is on demand. You do it as you have time. Everything is on a private online platform. We have a Zoom meeting once a month if you want to come to that. You're not required to even turn on your camera or your microphone. You can just sit there and listen until you're comfortable. It is just everything that I felt like I needed when my husband was deep in addiction, but I couldn't find. And that's why I created it for you. So please just go to the page and check it out. Again, it's at marriedtoaddiction.com under the Need Help drop-down. If you feel a little tug at your heart when you're on that page, if you think to yourself, this might be for me, this sounds like something I need, pray about it. And then if you feel led to move forward, click the button and join us. I would absolutely love to have you there. And I know that all of the other sisters would too. I hope that's been helpful for you today. As always, thank you so much for listening, and I will see you next time. Hey, one more quick thing before I let you go today. Do you follow Married to Addiction on either Instagram or Facebook, or both? If not, I would love to have you join me over there. It's a great place to stay connected with everything that's happening with Married to Addiction. I post updates about my podcast episodes, of course. I post about my freebies. I post about my programs. I post encouragement in the way of Bible verses and things like that. I also post just like some helpful little teaching nuggets sometimes too. So I really think that you would get a lot of value out of that as the wife of an alcoholic, and I would love to have you join me on either Facebook or Instagram, or both. You can find me at facebook.com/married to addiction, or just at married to addiction on Instagram. I hope to see you there.